Welcome, everyone. Happy to have this chance to share with you another way you can access ACS data. If you're not familiar with NHGIS, I'll be providing some basics here. If you are familiar, that's great. I'll be recovering some things you're probably already familiar with, but there'll be some new things later on in the talk. I'm happy to share some new things that we just recently released, and I noticed I just have the month wrong on this slide. I'll fix that later. We are in May of 2023, and I work at IPUMS. IPUMS provides all kinds of census and survey data, American and international, through different websites. And the one I'm talking about today is the NHGIS website. That stands for the National Historical Geographic Information System. We provide geographic U.S. Census and survey data going all the way back to 1790. We provide both summary tables and GIS files so that you're able to download the data, the summary data, and the boundaries needed to make maps like these that we're looking at, counties from 1840 and 1940, census tracts from 1940. And we do also have data up through the present, so it's not only an historical site. We have ACS data from all 5-year periods and 1-year periods back to 2009. We are also funded by federal grants from NSF and NIH, which means that we are entirely free to use with only 2 conditions: that you cite us and that you do not redistribute without permission. But otherwise, it is open to all users. And one thing that makes us popular is that we provide all summary levels down to census blocks. So you can get data like this that the National Geographic used from our site to indicate, ethnic composition by block in Los Angeles and across the country. And one reason why people often do come to us for very small area data is that we provide nationwide extent for most levels. Here's an example of a shapefile for 2020 block group boundaries. That includes all of the US and Puerto Rico in one file. You don't have to stitch it together yourself. And the same goes for our summary tables. You can get all block groups in the nation in one file. Blocks you have to get by state, but that is the only thing that we require you to select smaller extents for. I should note that we don't have extent selection for any levels other than block and block group. So if you want tracts for only one state, you will have to download tract data for the entire nation and then select it out yourself. But that is one caveat to our site. We do try to support lots of users who need to download lots of data. And another way we support them is to provide time series and geographic crosswalks, the main subject of my talk today. These products link data together across time, making it easier to create maps like this. Population change in the Detroit area from 1990 to 2020 at the block group level. I'll talk more about the specific data products that we have available to do this as I proceed through the talk. What is difficult about providing data like this is that things don't match up across time. And that's precisely why we provide this product, to make it easier for you to match things up across time. In this example, the census tracts in Charlotte from 1990 to 2020 indicate a lot of changes in the boundaries of census tracts. In these areas, for example, you can see one large tract became several smaller tracts. And how do you match up the data for these areas across time? This isn't only a problem with small areas. As many of you know, it's a problem at the county level as well. In 2001, Broomfield County came into existence, carved out of 4 other counties, and complicated all nation level maps of county change. You can't match up Broomfield County exactly with any data from before 2010. And that's not all. Not only do geographic boundaries change, but also The structure of summary tables change. Which data are available and which categories are used to classify concepts, which questions were asked may change. So in this example, between 80 and 90, the census changed how it measured educational attainment from years of school completed to highest level of achievement. So which degree did you receive? And we try to match these up as best we can with documentation provided through our time series tables. So time series tables are the product that we have at NHGIS that actually allows you to download integrated linked data across time. Once you've downloaded it, this is what an example file would look like. This is a file of state level data. All of the rows in the data file correspond to states, and then different columns correspond to different time series. This set of columns corresponds to a total person's time series table that stretches from 1970 through 2020. I have also added one 5-year period to get data for a point in time between 2010 and 2020. You'll see there's also a margin of error column for the ACS data. To the right, there is another time series table of persons by race. First a white time series and then a Black or African American time series. Those are separate time series within the same table, and they're organized in this way in the file. We have column codes that indicate which table each time series column comes from and which time series each column represents. So there's a different code for the white columns and a different code for the Black or African American columns. And then the year is also indicated in these columns. This particular file uses a time varies by column layout, which means that the times vary across columns. We also allow you to download the data in time varies by row format. In this example, you can see that each row corresponds to a different year. Again, there's one column per time series or two columns in cases where you have included ACS data and you receive a margin of error. There are a lot of empty cells here in cases where margin of error is not available for a particular year, or this 2 or more races time series is not available before the year 2000, which was the first year that the Census Bureau allowed people to identify multiple races. Our third layout option is time varies by file. This particular file contains 1970 data, and then you would receive separate files for each other year that you request. How do you get time series table data? This is our main web page. When you arrive at NHGIS, you can find the time series table documentation down in the left menu here, or you can browse and find the time series tables and download them through these links. When you click on those, either of those, you're brought to our data finder. This looks a lot like Fact Finder or data.census.gov in a lot of ways. What you'll need to do here is first select a data filter. Here I've selected the race topic. And now down below, I can see which data are available for the filters I've selected. There are over 14,000 source tables. These are basically original tables, sometimes somewhat modified to fit NHGIS standards, but they are direct from original data sources. You can see these examples go back to 1790. A really useful feature of NHGIS that a lot of users like is that you can sort this table by any of these column names, and it's particularly useful to sort by popularity. If I want a race table, I may be probably most interested in the race tables that other people have been downloading. So I can sort by popularity, and I very quickly see recent race tables that provide basic race tabulations. So I could select from those. Other tabs over here provide different types of data, including our GIS files, which we provide as shape files, providing boundaries and in some cases points or centers of population. And then the main focus of this talk are time series tables. Here in the middle, we have the time series table data. You'll see there are, in this case, 4 different tables that provide basic counts of persons by race, each providing a different number of race categories, 5, 6, 7, or 7, and differing also by the range of years and geographic levels they cover. So what we've done is we've gone back through different periods of time and determined what are the smallest number of race categories or the standard set of race categories for each of these periods. When you go back to 1970, there are fewer standard race categories available in tables. So we provide a smaller set of race categories for the table that goes back that far. The 1970 summary data also did not provide nation, region, or division geographic levels. So that's not an option for this table, but it is for the other tables. If you want to learn more about any of these things, you can click on the underlined text here, which will provide pop-ups providing more information. We don't actually illustrate the data anywhere within our website. You can only download that through files, but you can learn more through these various pop-ups. And in this case, this is details for the first time series table with 5 time series, white, black, or African American, etc. This is details for the next table with 6 categories that goes back to 1980, and then a table that goes back to 1990 with 7 categories. As you scroll down, there's more information about exactly which data sets and tables we derived each of these our statistics from, and farther down there's notes, and here's an asterisk which corresponds to this asterisk we've been seeing up in these numbers here. This asterisk provides detail that there aren't actually that many categories available for every year because multi-race persons were not counted separately before 2000. As an example of the types of things we've documented, farther down, you can actually get links to our original technical documentation and subject definitions for most of our sources, which we host on our website. So these links should be working and get you directly to the most relevant information for each year. This is all available through our dynamic data finder webpage. It's also available back through our main page in the time series table documentation through this link to current table details. You can download a big PDF that contains all of those notes and documentation that I just showed. So I should emphasize, as of now, both the years and geographic levels are what's available for each table. You do not need to download all of those when you select the table. You get to choose which of those you'd like. So the way that would work is I would first click on this plus symbol to add a table to my cart. You can see up here, it's a data cart, kind of like when you're working through Amazon or other e-commerce sites. You're adding products. You can continue once you've added something, but I'm going to go ahead and add another table. One of the caveats about using our time series tables is that they generally do not contain universe counts the way that ACS tables do. That is, we do not have a count of total persons within our race table. We only have each of the individual races. So if you want to produce a count of percent population by race, you would also want to get a total population table. You could select that topic and then select another table that covers the same years and geographic levels. And then you've got 2 time series tables in your cart. You can continue to our options page where you'll see you can select geographic levels. And as of a couple weeks ago, you can also now select which years you want to include in your time series tables. When you click on that select years option, you'll get this pop up. You can see you can either select all decennial years or all 5-year periods if you wanted, or individual years and individual periods. So if I click on this plus symbol, I would add all of the decennial years to my download. And then I'm also interested in adding this middle period for a point in time between 2010 and 2020. So I will add that. Now that's my set of selections, and it's reflected back on this options page. I will next select geographic levels. I want census tract data. I've selected that here. I submit, and now my selections are complete, and I am able to continue to the review and submit page. I can select which file format I'd like, comma delimited fixed with or without a descriptive header row. I can select which layout. I showed the 3 layouts earlier. And I can add a description. We use this description because we save all of your requests in your account. When you come back to our site and log in, you can find all previous requests that you've made, and this description will appear to indicate what each request contained in your own words so that you could revise or resubmit an older request if you'd like something like it again in the future. Submit that, you'll get to our downloads page and wait a minute or 2, or maybe several if you have a very large request, and eventually you'll be able to get a link that downloads the entire data that you've requested. And that's how that works. How would it work if I go through data.census.gov? You may or may not know that you can actually select multiple years of ACS data in a single download from data.census.gov. Of course, you can't get anything from before the year 2000, but as ACS data users, you may not need data from before 2000 all that often, so you could get it here. Similar to NHGIS, of course, you select a bunch of filters or start with a search. My own preference is almost always to use the filters so that I can view all that's available and control that more carefully. In this case, I've narrowed it down about as much as I can, and I still have 402 results. Unlike NHGIS, I can't sort by popularity. So to get to this race table, I first had to expand my view of available tables up to 25 from the default 10. And then I had to scroll down, read through several different tables until I found finally the basic race table that is of greatest interest for a basic race request. These are the downsides of data.census.gov that we all know and love, right? Furthermore, I wasn't able to see the data in my web page because the data set is too large, but I can download it. What if I wanted to add more years? I wouldn't actually be able to do that through these links. That just allows you to change individual data sets and years that you're viewing. But if you click on download table, you may or may not realize it, you will get a pop-up that allows you to select which different years you are requesting. And then you could download the CSV, but you get one time and one table per file. You wouldn't be able to get race and median income and sex by age all in one file as you can with NHGIS, and you wouldn't be able to get all of these years linked together. Which brings me to another key subject to cover in my remaining time here, which is how do we link things geographically across time? We do it 2 different ways, nominally and standardized. The table I showed you earlier is a nominally integrated table. This links across time by name and code, which works great with state level data like we have here, because the state's boundaries have not changed hardly at all in recent years. So when I match by name, I'm getting comparable data across time. It doesn't work as well with census tracts. As we saw earlier, census tract boundaries change a lot. So when you get a nominally integrated census tract data file, you get a lot of empty cells because not all of these tracts existed in every year, and you only have data here for the years when they existed. Additionally, some of their boundaries may have changed, so you may not be getting data for exactly the same area in every case. As we saw, the Charlotte case has a lot of changes. What would this nominally integrated data be useful for with tracts? Well, creating these 2 maps. I used nominally integrated time series data to produce these. I downloaded 1990 boundaries and 2020 boundaries, and I can get a single file that contains data for both of them. Or I could get time varies by file and get a separate file for both of them, but I do it with a single time series table. But you probably would be more interested in geographically standardized data, where I actually get data for a single year's census tracts. In this case, we have standardized data for 2010 census tracts. And we have estimates from 1990 and 2000 that are based on block level data from 1990 and 2000. We take 1990 block data and we allocate it to the 2010 census tracts, and where blocks are split by 2010 census tract boundaries, there is some uncertainty, and we model that, and we report here in these lower and upper bound columns, what if nobody lived in this tract from some blocks, or what if everybody in the split blocks lived in this tract? That's our range of possibilities based on what we know about the spatial relationships between 1990 blocks and 2010 tracts. And we provide that information here to give you an indication of the uncertainty in the data. I've got just a few minutes remaining. I'll try to fit in time for questions, so I'll rush through the remaining slides here. Our geographically standardized data cover 1990 to 2020 data for 2010 census units for 10 different geographic levels, including block groups, like that map. There's a lot of different time series and 111 tables, including 19 tables that already include the 2020 census data. But the big caveat is that it is we only have this data for short form counts, the short form census that covers everybody in the country, because those are the only data that have block level data. And to produce high quality geographically standardized data, we are starting from blocks. That does allow you to identify these data on these subjects, but not income, education, employment, and no ACS data. For ACS data, you can use our nominally integrated time series, not geographically standardized, but still linked across time. Lots more tables because there's lots more subjects. Only 8 geographic levels, but a lot of the major ones that you'd be interested in, probably years mainly back to 1970. A couple of tables go back to 1790 and 1820. And as of a couple of weeks ago, we have added all 12 ACS 5-year periods from the 2010 5-year to the 2021 5-year. A big caveat just at this moment is that we just discovered this week, our release a couple of weeks ago had missing data in tract data and county data for lots of different areas. We are working diligently to fix that as quickly as we can, and we will report that in our revision history on our webpage as soon as that is fixed. So if you're chomping at the bit to get started with this, make sure you check on that before you get the tract or county level data. And I apologize greatly for that. We will get that fixed quickly. If you need geographically standardized ACS data, we have a resource for that. Our geographic crosswalks provide interpolation weights that allow you to allocate data from one year's units to another year's units. This is on our main page under geographic crosswalks. There's lots of detail here, so I won't go into a lot of detail because you can read up about it yourselves. Through this page, we encourage you, strongly encourage you, to allocate data from the smallest zones possible. So if you want standardized tract data, we'd actually recommend you start with block groups or block group part data to allocate that to another year's data, because you'll get more accurate results. You can see here, when you allocate from tracts, you make a lot of assumptions about how to spread things out. When a single tract is split among multiple tracts, you have to disaggregate among those tracts, and you may produce inaccurate results. This is more integrated here, but in terms of percent black, than what is actually the case based on the block data from 1990. So if you start with block groups or block group part data, you would get a more accurate representation. For that reason, our main crosswalks available right now are for small areas. They are starting from blocks or from blocks or block group parts. Block group parts were the smallest units available in 1990 and 2000. So we have crosswalks for the long form data from those years. And we have crosswalks for block groups between 2010 and 2020 from block groups to census tracts or counties. So this means that you will be able to create standardized ACS data spanning the two main definitions of block groups and census tracts between 2010 and 2020. We are working right now on adding tract-to-tract crosswalks, which will be easier to use. I will still recommend that you start from block groups when you can. These should be out within 2 or 3 weeks, I believe. We are also working on more crosswalks from blocks to larger units. In the future, we'd like to add more ACS years. For example, Connecticut this year, we'll have all new counties with all new census tract and block group codes. So to standardize for those years, you'll probably want some more years. And then will also be creating crosswalks that go to 2020 eventually. That's involved. So that wraps up what I had to share today. I'd like to acknowledge our funders, and I'll leave it on this page for a bit so you can see some additional resources. We have an API, an ART package, a Twitter handle, and a user forum that may interest you if you'd like to follow these links. Sorry, I don't have more time for questions, but I do have a few minutes here, so we can go back to those. Q&A. I'll start here at the top. I have a very simple question. Apologies if it was covered. What does IPUMS stand for? It used to stand for Integrated Public Use Microdata Series. So similar to the Public Use Microdata Sample that PUMS stands for. But IPUMS originally only described our microdata sites. It later became the name for all of our websites, which are not microdata, all of them. So now it is just an acronym like ESRI, if you're familiar with GIS. I'm switching over to the live chat. Anybody have questions there?
There was one question. There was one question that came in. If the NHGIS has the ability to link with ACS using the serial number.
I don't know serial numbers. The microdata have something like a serial number. Now, we don't use a Tiger serial number. We don't use we use GeoIDs. We do have GeoIDs in our data. So the census standard identifier is a GeoID for geographic areas, and we do have that in our data as well, both in our shapefiles and in our summary tables. The NHGIS standard identifier is called the GIS join, and that's also available in both types of files. Any other questions? I see any advice on how to track % low income over time in a way that is fair and informative, because my county, the poverty level changes. Well, we do have poverty time series tables for counties in NHGIS. So you could come to NHGIS and get the a poverty time series table for counties and get that all in one file. Am I missing any other questions in here?
I think those were all the questions. Oh, wait, there might be one new one. Nope, that one came into Q&A. I see.
How the popularity is determined. Okay, yeah, so popularity is determined by how many users actually request those data features. So tables and GIS files, as more users request them, the popularity increases. And we actually apply a half-life to those counts so that if a user requested it a year ago, it wouldn't count as much as somebody who requested it yesterday.